The momentum against the LA Dodgers probably started with this. There was an American podcaster showing the Mariners side of the Mariners Blue Jays series. I went on it and I noticed he said something. This game would be great if we hadn't to listen to that Canadian propaganda. He was criticizing Doug Ford's ads when about Reagan saying tariffs are bad for the States and Canada and we have to do free trade. And I said to myself, this is the momentum of something else. Well, Team Canada won Game 7. And they didn't wait too long to play the Dodgers. Dodgers knocked off the Brewers, well-deserved defending champions. But everybody online that was American, that wasn't a Blue Jay fan, was throwing out anti-Canada sentiments. And one fucking asshole, he said, I bet you $1 million that the Blue Jays are going to lose 4 straight. And someone on this site wrote back, he said, have you seen the Blue Jays in the last 2 weeks? He said he knocked off the Yankees. And the guy literally said, I didn't watch them in the playoffs. Okay, so what happened last night? This is Friday, October 24th. Dodgers started an early 2-0 lead, but we saw that they were a little bit rusty. Ohtani wasn't doing anything until he hit that 2-run home run, and most of the key players was. So Varsho had a big game. Kirk 2-run homer. Barger a grand slam coming off the bench. The first ever player in Major League Baseball history to hit a pinch hit grand slam in their first World Series at bat. And Yasevich had a good game, even though he couldn't go the full 5 innings. He was well deserving for the victory. Blake Snell was a rough shot. So why do people turn against a team thinking they're going to lose? Now I give an example about this. When George Brett and the Kansas City Royals came to the Promised Land in 1985, even though they had a hard go of it against Toronto, they were behind 3-1, and they had a hard go against St. Louis, throw out the bad call in Game 6 because that didn't really decide the end of the game. It was just, while it was still tied. You're ahead of the team, but you still had George Brett. And Toronto, the first 2 sets of the series didn't have had Bo Bichette. Bo Bichette, it was the second best hitter in Major League Baseball this year. Almost had the most hits. He was injured for the last portion of the season. Easily could have won the hit title, but would have finished second behind Aaron Judge for the batting title. So you put Bichette back in the lineup. They have a good bench. They have Davis Schneider. They got Barger. They got Ty France, Miles Straw. Ernie Clement's been hitting like a bitch down the stretch. Team Canada's ahead 1-0. Now I said the first 2 games of any series don't mean as much as Game 3, Game 4. We all know what happened in 1981, where the Dodgers lost the first 2 games in New York. It wouldn't have been for a great game by Fernando, where he must have scattered about 72 hits to get the victory. You have to be consistent in each of the games. Now, the reason why Toronto bet New York is because of the home run ball. Like I said, last night between Kirk and Barger and the contact hitters, and Rodriguez and Jeter and Ortiz were doing the Fox Baseball thing, just saying it's hard to get a bat out of Toronto hands because they make contact. Now, no offense to the Dodgers. Yes, they're a good team, but like I said, their bullpen is a little bit suspect. They've had injuries, and if it's not Ohtani doing it, like the team is very inconsistent, and they had a worse record than Toronto this year. Toronto had to basically go on a win streak to win the division. What really helped Toronto was having home field advantage. It worked out in the Seattle series, and it worked out in the Yankee series. So what's going to happen in Game 2 tonight and as we go along? Again, take it one day at a time. But why were people underrating Toronto? Well, here's the deal. No matter what happens, he never showed Toronto on the major networks on TV on Saturday nights. The games were AL East, but he rarely showed Toronto because the only star known to the rest of the Major League Baseball fans is Vladimir Guerrero. So, 1971, when the Pirates knocked off the Orioles, it was Clemente. In Clemente, one player can make a difference. You're looking at 1990 with the Reds. It was the pitching staff that made a difference. There are always going to be factors. So with Springer and Bichette and Guerrero as the top three players, when you pass the baton, look at Kirk. Kirk was a 15 home run, 45 RBI catcher. Now he's getting into kind of lower end Johnny Bench territory. And like I said, he made him the number one. That's a big factor too as well. And right now, I think Toronto has 5 former starting pitchers in the bullpen. You got Bassett, you got Gausman, you got Bauer, all the key ones. Max Scherzer could play a factor in the next few games as well. So if you can't stop Toronto in the middle innings, you're going to lose. That 9-run inning last night, which is probably, I think the last time they had 10 runs in the inning was at a 68 World Series against, of all people, the Cardinals. I never saw that coming. You know, usually the World Series is defense and some key 3-run homers. But the problem is, if Kirk doesn't hit a home run, Varsho might hit a home run. Barger, David Schneider, utility man, that's his first cousin to Rance Smolnick's. So, it's going to be interesting as it goes along. If Toronto can bat as a team in that 270 range, get 10 to 12 hits per contest, work the pitchers, get a lot of walks. And like I said, pitching around Vladdy, if you got Bichette and other key players around him, it's going to be rough. But ironically, ladies and gentlemen, like Barger was an afterthought. He ended up in Toronto after kind of a controversial status with these other teams. He got caught for drug suspension or, different stuff. But seeing these young players, I never thought in a million years I'd say this, but this team is the closest you're going to find to the 2015-16 Blue Jays for home run power, overall talent. But 15-16, it was just bad luck. We never made it to the World Series. We kind of lost the energy after beating Texas and Baltimore, and once we played Cleveland, Kansas City, we pretty well burned ourselves out. But the momentum of beating the Yankees, who have been a long-time rivals of Toronto, and the momentum of beating Seattle after losing them in that disastrous playoff game a couple of years before, where after that Teoscar was summarily dumped. It's the way it goes. So my prediction the rest of the series, if it goes 6 games, Toronto's going to eventually win, because I don't think they're going to be worried too much at home dealing with the Dodgers, because the last at-bat's going to be important. All you have to do in LA, I think, in my opinion, is win 1 game. But crazy things have happened. Like I said, maybe Toronto might sweep. But that was a masterful performance last night for Toronto. It's not even small ball; it's what you call contact ball. And you got Derek Jeter and David Ortiz and Alex Rodriguez bragging up Toronto because Toronto is a real baseball team. They're not just a bunch of stars. You have traded for certain players, but the ghost of Jose Bautista has infested Vladimir Guerrero Jr., especially that bat flip against the Yankees. So I don't know, man. This is ghosts of 2015 and 2016 could be arriving, just like the old ghosts of the Forum for the Montreal Canadiens. So get your popcorn ready, and ladies and gentlemen, don't watch the Fox feed. Watch the Sportsnet feed, because the Fox feed, it's like there's only one team they're covering. It's the Dodgers. Oh, Toronto hit a home run. That's everything. Thanks for listening, and give us a like, comment, subscribe, or share.